You are a baker. You awaken at the first blush of dawn, your small house already warm from the waking sun. Outside, the Nile winds like a silver thread through the baked mud bricks of your village. As you stretch, your back protesting the endless bends over the hearth, you know today will be much like yesterday and many mornings before it. But in the repetition, there is comfort, a rhythm that echoes the steady flow of the river, the rising and setting sun, the very pulse of the land that gives you life. You run a hand over your flour-dusted tunic, a relic from yesterday's work, and head to the courtyard well for your morning ablutions. Splash of cool water on your face, a blessing against the heat of the coming day. Your wife, her dark eyes bright even in the dim light, has already begun the day's tasks. Beside her, your daughter is learning the ways of the house, her small hands mimicking her mother's as she helps prepare the day's offerings to the gods. You join them, your rough calloused hands finding purchase on the worn stone, and together you create the small cakes that will feed both the family and the flames. For you are not just a baker, you are a provider, a servant of the gods. Your oven is a small one, little more than a hollowed pit set within a raised brick platform. Yet within its modest depths you coax life into lifeless grain, transforming humble wheat berries into staff of life, creating each day the bread that sustains your family, your village, and by extension, the whole of Egypt. The pharaoh himself relies on men like you to feed his people, and your ovens turn tirelessly, fueled by the ever-giving Nile that waters the fields where the grain is grown. Life here is not easy, but it is good. There is purpose in the daily grind, comfort in the steady routine. And though the shadow of the pharaoh looms large, casting its demands and expectations across the land, you find solace in the small, the feel of cool clay in your hands, the comforting weight of grain sacks at your feet, the smile of a child as he breaks his morning bread. It is in these moments that you feel most connected to the gods. It's not when standing in the shadow of great temples or calling down blessings upon the pharaoh's harvest, but when you turn simple grain and water into the staff of life, sustaining not just the body, but the soul. The Nile is giving today, heavy with the year's growth, its waters rich with silt from the receding floods. The grain you have stored from last year's harvest is still untouched, a testament to the bounty of the previous year and the hope for the one to come. But it is time to begin again, to draw upon these stores only if needed. For the Nile's gift must be honored, its bounty used to replenish the stores for the coming lean months. You take up a stone pestle and begin to grind the grain, the rhythm of pestle and stone a familiar song in your ears. Around you, the other bakers in your village begin their own tasks, each a vital cog in the machine that feeds Egypt. Soon, the air will be thick with the smell of grinding grain and the murmur of men and women working in unison with the sun. As the hours pass, the unsifted flour you ground yesterday is mixed with water and salt. It is a simple alchemy, yet one that requires care and skill. Too much water and the bread will be heavy and sour. Too little and it will be as hard and dry as the desert wind that whips across the fields in the late afternoon. Today you are baking for the temple kitchens, supplying the grain that will sustain the priests and pilgrims who make their way to Karnak and Luxor. It is an honor and a responsibility you do not take lightly. Every loaf you bake carries with it the hopes and prayers of your people, the sustenance that allows them to endure the scorching heat and endless toil of their lives. You see the finished loaves carried away, placed carefully in wicker baskets, and know that soon your ovens will be fired once more, but for now, there is rest. Beneath the shade of a tamarisk tree, you eat your evening meal. The taste of bread fresh from the oven mingled with the tang of pickled onions and the salt of preserved fish from the Nile. Your daughter, her cheeks smeared with breadcrumbs, looks up at you with adoration. Your wife, her hands gnarled with the effort of a lifetime spent at the hearth, smiles at you, her eyes crinkling at the corners. In this moment, you are content. You are a baker, and this is your life. The afterlife, you know, is a place of plenty, where the fields are evergreen and the grain flows like the river Styx. It is a place where, according to legend, Ra, the sun god, drives his solar bark across the sky each day, bringing light and warmth to the world. Just as Ra depends on the darkness to make his journey meaningful, so too do you depend on the night to give your ovens a chance to cool, to give your hands a chance to rest. For you, the night is not a time for fear, but a time for renewal. a chance to gather with your family and share stories around a small fire, a break from the endless cycle of baking that sustains your life. In the flickering shadows cast by the fire, you see not just the faces of your loved ones, but the faces of your ancestors, their eyes watching over you, their spirits finding solace in the rhythm of your life. The night air is alive with the buzz of insects and the distant calls of nocturnal birds. The stars, clear and bright in the dark Egyptian sky, seem close enough to touch, their light a silent witness to the stories you share. The tales of your ancestors, passed down through generations, come alive in the darkness. You listen enthralled as your daughter's eyes widen at stories of daring adventures, of battles fought and won, of pharaohs who ruled with wisdom and justice. Her small hand, clutching tightly onto your tunic, reminds you of the importance of these stories, the legacy they carry, and the responsibility you have to keep them alive. The night is also a time for you to share your own stories, triumphs and struggles of your life, the lessons learned from the unforgiving oven, the river Nile, and the capricious whims of the pharaoh. Each story is a thread that binds you to your ancestors, a link in the chain that connects the living to the dead. The night deepens, and the flickering firelight dances in your eyes, reflecting the wisdom gathered from a lifetime of baking, a lifetime of living. The warmth of the fire, the love of your family, and the connection to your ancestors sustain you through the long hours of the day ahead. With renewed strength, you prepare for another day of baking, knowing that with each loaf you create, you are also creating a piece of history. In the bustling heart of Thebes, you stand before the great temple of Amun, your arms laden with freshly baked loaves. The air is thick with incense and the murmur of prayers as you make your way through the throngs of worshippers. Your steps echo on the paved temple floor, a steady beat in the vast cavernous space. Before you, the priests move with an otherworldly grace, their bodies painted in the sacred red ochre, their voices rising and falling in rhythmic chants. You watch, mesmerized, as they dance before the altar, their movements as precise and unwavering as the movements of the stars in the night sky. A priest, his face veiled in the shadow of a tall papyrus fan, turns slowly, his gaze meeting yours for a fleeting moment. You look back, startled, and catch a glimpse of something profound, something that transcends the boundaries of your everyday life. In that brief exchange, you sense the weight of your role in this grander scheme, the connection between the mundane task of baking and the divine worship of the gods. You realize that in your hands, the humble loaf becomes more than just food. It transforms into an offering, a physical manifestation of the life force that sustains not just the people of Thebes, but the gods themselves. With this realization, you approach the altar, your steps now surer, your arms held high. You offer the bread to the waiting priests, your heart swelling with a sense of purpose and pride. In that moment, you are not just a baker, you are a conduit between the earthly realm and the divine. You are the embodiment of the life-giving energy that flows from the earth to the oven to the altar and finally to the worshippers. The rhythmic chants of the priests fill your ears and you close your eyes, letting the melody of worship wash over you. The scent of incense mingles with the aroma of freshly baked bread, creating a heady fragrance that seems to reach up and touch the heavens. You open your eyes and look around at the sea of faces, each turned towards the altar, each lost in prayer. You see the pharaoh, his face solemn, his eyes closed in devotion, and you realize that the sustenance you provide is sustaining the very core of Egypt's society. You are a baker, and in your hands is the power to nourish not just the body, but the soul of your people. You awaken in the pre-dawn darkness of ancient Egypt, 3,500 years ago. The air is cool against your skin, a blessed relief from the relentless heat that will soon press down upon the land like a heavy blanket. You are a baker, and your day begins while the stars still pierce the indigo. Sky above the fertile banks of the Nile, your dwelling is modest mud brick walls that have absorbed the heat of countless days. A flat roof where grain is spread to dry under the merciless sun. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, smooth from years of footsteps. Cool now in these precious hours before R.A. begins his daily journey across the heavens. You move quietly, for your family still sleeps on woven red mats, their breathing soft and steady in the darkness. The emmer wheat awaits you in large pottery jars, each grain a small, hard promise of sustenance. This is not the plump wheat of modern fields, but a more primitive grain. It's tough and resilient like the people who depend upon it. The kernels are small, golden brown. An incredibly hard itch, one a challenge that must be conquered before it will yield its nourishment. You gather your tools with the reverence of a priest preparing for ritual, for indeed, that is exactly what you are doing. The grinding stones, 2 pieces of sandstone, one concave, one convexa, been smoothed by countless hours of use. The lower stone, the quern, sits heavy and stable, its surface dimpled with tiny indentations that will help grip the grain. The upper stone, smaller and more manageable, fits perfectly in your palms, worn smooth by generations of hands like yours. The first handful of emmer wheat cascades onto the quern with a sound like gentle rain on stone. You begin the ancient rhythm, pressing down with the upper stone, rolling it forward and back, crushing each kernel with patient persistence. The movement is meditative, if not a cure. Entire body sways with the motion, your shoulders and arms working in harmony with the stone. Your wife stirs beside you, sleep crinkling her dark eyes into playful squints. She too has awakened early, drawn perhaps by the ancient music of your labor, or simply compelled by the same instincts that pull you toward the rising sun. Her lithe form moves with practiced grace, weaving another reed mat to add to the collection. Each one a testament to her skilled fingers and an essential addition to the comfort of your home. In the distance, the faint bleating of goats blends with the buzz of insects stirring from their slumber. The sounds of your world drift into your small sanctuary, mingling with the rhythmic pulse of your work, a steady drumbeat that echoes the steady pulse of your heart. The sky deepens from indigo to sapphire, hinting at the golden blaze that Ra will soon unleash upon the world. With a final roll of the stone, you halt, gathering up the flour that spills around the quern. It is finer than the flour of later ages, coarser still, flecked with grain that slipped the stone's embrace, tougher to use, more challenging to transform into the staff of life. But you have labored with emmer wheat since you were a boy, your muscles and sinew honed by years of patient, repetitive tasks. For you, no challenge is too great when the alternative is starvation. A few steps away, your children awake, their eyes blinking open, sleepy smiles gracing their dirt-smeared faces. The eldest, a girl of 6 summers, yawns widely, displaying a mouthful of teeth as sharp and strong as the grain you grind. Beside her, a boy of 4. He too is learning the ways of the world, how to tend the goats, how to find water in the parched land, how to offer humble supplications to the gods. He looks up at you with innocent eyes, mirroring the wonder with which you view the first light of dawn. You scoop up the flour, its fine dust tickling your nostrils and coating your tongue with grit. It is not yet bread, not yet the solace it will become after baking, but it is on its way. As Ra climbs higher in the heavens, his rays grow bolder, turning the sky from sapphire to turquoise, finally to the brilliant blue of midday. The heat begins to press down, transforming the landscape into a shimmering sea of gold. You hurry now, urgency lending speed to your steps. At the far edge of your village, you see the smoke of the communal ovens rising like prayers to the gods. The bakers of your community have awakened, drawn by the same needs that drive you. They too will transform the hard kernels of grain into the staff of life. You reach down, digging your toes into the hot sand, grounding yourself to this moment, to this place. Your journey today will take you farther afield. You are to meet a merchant whose caravan will carry your bread to the laborers building the great pyramids far to the north. You load your supplies onto a donkey, its sure-footedness belying the sharpness of its gaze. Its ears twitch nervously, ever alert to danger. Like all living things in this harsh land, it has learned to respect the power of Ra and the wisdom of fear. You climb onto the donkey, gripping the rope reins in calloused hands. Beside you, your son sits tall, his small frame dwarfed by the vastness of the desert that surrounds your village. You urge the donkey onward, guiding it with gentle tugs on the reins. The rhythmic clop of hooves on packed earth joins the chorus of sounds that make up your world. The heat intensifies, turning the world into a shimmering mirage. You shield your eyes, squinting against the glare that bounces off the white sand dunes like 1,000 tiny mirrors. The sky blazes overhead, a dome of fire, indifferent to the struggles of those who dwell beneath it. Still you keep moving. To stop would be to surrender to the heat, and there is no surrender in your heart. Your people have endured far worse and live to tell the tale. The wind whispers tales of its own, stories carried from distant lands on wings of sand, rustling through the stalks of grain that bowed before its touch. You listen intently, for the wind carries secrets, whispers of change, hints of hardship, murmurs of hope. Understanding the wind is a skill as vital as reading the stars. As the sun begins its long journey towards the horizon, the air grows cooler, the light softer. You pause to rest, unslinging the heavy bag of bread from the donkey's back. You share it with your son, breaking the loaves by hand, each piece a symbol of sustenance, of life itself. The taste is simple, earthy, a testament to the land and the labor that brought it to your lips. The sun dips below the horizon, leaving the sky awash with hues of orange and purple. The darkness falls fast, deeper here in the desert, far from the glow of the village fires. You huddle close to your son, seeking warmth in his small body, sharing the last fragments of bread between you. In the vast darkness, you tell him stories of the gods, of heroes and monsters, of love and loss, of life and death. The constellations wheel overhead, silent witnesses to your timeless tale. And in the silence between the stories, you hear the whisper of the wind, carrying tales from distant lands, and the echo of your own story. You awake to the insistent bleating of goats, their cries a demanding call to action.
I'll be beside you.
Your son stirs, his eyes opening to the gray light of dawn. He too is awake now, his small body ready for another day of learning and growth. You rise with him, sharing a silent moment as you watch the sky begin its slow transformation from gray to blue. The familiar routine of the baker's life beckons, the grinding of grain, the kneading of dough, the baking of bread. And as you move through the motions, you know that in every movement there is poetry, in every step, a story. Your life may seem simple, even monotonous to those who have never known the bite of hunger or the sting of thirst. But in the simplicity lies strength, and in the repetition, a kind of beauty. You are a baker in ancient Egypt, and your story, like the grains you grind, is made of small, hard things, each one a testament to your endurance, your skill, and your unwavering spirit. Theirs is a life that may seem removed from our own, yet it is woven from the same threads that make up the tapestry of human existence. In their resilience, their resourcefulness, and their quiet dignity, we find a reflection of ourselves, a reminder of the strength that lies within us all. Their story is not just a tale of ancient times, but a timeless story of the human spirit, a testament to the power of perseverance and the beauty of everyday life. The cycle begins anew. The grain is gathered in, the thresher thumps rhythmically against the unforgiving clay floor. Then comes winnowing, sifting, the endless search for stones and sticks and other debris that must be picked out by hand, a process so tedious it is left to the children. Then comes the cleaning, the washing, the soaking overnight in cold water. Then comes grinding, and you know you are not in a hurry. There is no need to be in a hurry. You have all day. The sky is an endless dome above you, empty and indifferent. The sun is a godless furnace in the heavens, and time is measured only by its slow, relentless passage. So you are not in a hurry. You have all day to grind the grain, to break down each kernel, to crush it, to grind it again and again until it yields to your patient assault and turns to flour. It is not quick work. Each grain must be broken, crushed, ground again and again until it becomes flour. The process takes hours, and your arms will ache before you're done, but there is something deeply satisfying about this transformation. You are taking the raw gift of the earth and making it ready for human consumption, continuing a practice that stretches back to the very dawn of civilization. And as you work, you sing, and the song is as old as the mountains that rim the plain. You sing of the rain that falls on the fields, the floods that threaten the crops, the scorching winds that dry up the streams and force the people to wander. You sing of the days when the grain was brought home, threshed and stored, and now it is ready to be ground into flour. You sing to the grain itself, begging it to yield to your efforts, begging it to become the staff of life that sustains you through lean times and seasons of plenty. And the grain listens, or perhaps it is the wind outside carrying your song to the ears of the world. As the sun climbs higher, the air grows warmer, then hotter, and the walls of the building offer little respite from the heat. But you do not stop. You could stop, of course. You could leave the grinding for another day. Rest now and resume your labors when the sun is less fierce. But there is no reason to stop. You must complete this task today. There is no tomorrow. Not really. Not in this place, where time is a flat circle, where each day is the same as the last, and the last was the same as the first. You cannot waste precious daylight hours. They are too valuable, too hard-won. So you do not stop. And as the day stretches on, you think of your daughter. She will be pleased with this flour, you think. She understands the connection between the seeds you plant and the bread that feeds your family. She understands that each sack of flour represents countless hours of labor, countless sacks of grain harvested and dried and threshed and sifted. She understands that every loaf of bread is a victory over the forces of nature, a testament to the endurance of her people. And when she kneads the dough, she will remember you, the provider, the one who brought home the grain and ground it into flour. And in the rhythm of her work, she will find a measure of pride, a sense of continuity with the past, a connection to the future. You do not know if she will follow you into the fields or stay behind to care for the home. Perhaps she will marry and move away, leaving you and your wife to tend the fields alone. It does not matter. Whether she stays or goes, she will always be your daughter, and in her you will always have a piece of yourself. And the sun keeps climbing, and the heat builds, and the shadows grow shorter, and you keep grinding. Your arms grow weary, and your back aches, and your hands bleed. But you do not stop. No, you do not stop. The work must be finished. And finally, as the sky begins to lighten, taking on the pale pearl color that precedes dawn, you hear the first stirrings of your neighbors. Other bakers are beginning their daily rituals. Other stones are beginning their ancient songs. The air fills with the soft percussion of grinding, a rhythm that will continue throughout the morning, the heartbeat of a civilization that depends entirely on grain. You look up, shielding your eyes from the glare of the rising sun. In the distance, you see the faint outlines of huts, the low, sturdy structures that dot the landscape like pebbles on a stone field. Some of these huts are new, some are old. Some are home to families who have lived here for generations, and some are home to nomads who have come to settle and raise grain. But each hut is a small universe unto itself, containing the hopes and dreams of its inhabitants, the memories they carry with them, the stories that define their lives. These huts are more than just shelters. They are fortresses against the elements, bulwarks against the relentless passage of time. As you watch, a woman emerges from one of the huts, her silhouette outlined against the glow of the rising sun. She is carrying a basket, and in her hands you can just make out the rhythmic motion of a grinder. For a moment you lock eyes with her, and you know without needing to speak that you both understand the importance of the task at hand. You both know that the sun will set again tonight, and with it the world will sink into darkness. You both know that the animals will stir in the night, and the wind will moan through the huts. And you both know that tomorrow you will wake and do this work again. You both know that this is what it means to be alive in this place. This is what it means to be human. The first light of dawn touches your face, and you open your eyes, blinking against the brightness around you. The world stirs. The birds take flight, the animals awaken, and the wind whispers through the grass. You stretch out your stiff limbs and push yourself upright. The muscles in your arms and back ache, and you can feel the grit of the grindstone beneath your palms. You are old, older than you thought you would be. Your joints ache with the memory of 1,000 grindings, and your hands are gnarled like the roots of an ancient tree. But you do not complain. You are strong. You are a survivor. You have endured the scorching sun and the endless toil and the gnawing hunger, and you have come through stronger and wiser for it. At your feet, the sacks of flour are piled high, a testament to your labors. The coarse, gritty flour is not the fine, powdery substance of the city bakeries, but it is pure and wholesome, and it will serve your purpose well. Your daughter is beside you, her face grave with the solemnity of one who has witnessed the mysteries of life. She helps you gather up the tools of your trade and prepare for the day ahead. The sun climbs higher in the sky, and you walk toward the village, your daughter at your side. The path is long and dusty, and the heat shimmers in the distance, but you do not falter. You are a pillar of strength and endurance, a living monument to the indomitable spirit of man. When you reach the village, you find that others have been busy. The marketplace is bustling with activity, filled with the sights, sounds, and smells of daily life. Women in colorful robes are bartering for fresh vegetables. Men in rough-spun linen are trading gossip and news. Children are chasing each other through the crowd, their laughter echoing in the narrow streets. You exchange greetings with those you meet, and you feel a sense of community, of belonging that warms you from the inside out. Then you reach the bakery, a simple structure with mud brick walls and a thatched roof. Inside, the ovens are stoked and ready, and the air is thick with the aroma of baking bread. The sight of the loaves, as they emerge from the oven, golden-hued and crusty, brings a smile to your face. Bread, the staff of life, the very essence of sustenance. You know that each loaf represents countless hours of labor, each crumb a testament to the bounty of the earth. Your daughter watches with wide eyes as the bread is distributed, seeing the joy it brings to the people around her. In that moment, you know that she understands the importance of what you do. She sees that you are not just a baker, you are a provider, a member of a community, a link in the chain of life that stretches back to the dawn of time. As the day wears on, you and your daughter continue to work, baking bread and sharing stories and laughter. The rhythm of the bakery surrounds you, the kneading of the dough, the clatter of the oven, the chatter of customers. It is a comforting symphony, one that has lulled you into a false sense of security. But as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, you know that the darkness is coming. The shadows lengthen, the temperature drops, and the wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of rain and the sound of distant thunder. You hurry to finish your work, knowing that soon the storm will break and the sky will turn a bruised purple. When the last loaf is sold and the ovens are cold, you and your daughter walk home under the cloak of darkness. The rain is coming down in torrents now, drumming on the rooftops and flooding the streets. Lightning flashes, illuminating the frightened faces of the villagers, and the thunder roars like the voice of a god. You put your arm around your daughter's shoulder, pulling her close as the first drops of rain hit you. Face, you know that the storm will pass and the sun will shine again tomorrow. But for now, you stand together, a father and daughter, united in the face of the elements. Grateful for the small hut that shelters you from the worst of the storm. The day has barely begun, but you have already been working for hours. The sky above is still dark with the remnants of night, but you know that the sun will rise soon over the eastern hills. There is no time to waste if you want to bake before sundown, when the relentless heat will make the task impossible. You must work quickly, efficiently, using every moment of the brief window of time that is available to you. Your muscles ache from yesterday's labor, but you cannot rest. There is no time for rest. You are a servant of the rhythms of nature, and right now, nature demands that you work. You knead the dough with practiced hands, pushing and pulling, folding and turning. The rhythm is ancient, almost a prayer. Each movement is designed to coax air into the mass, making it light and elastic. When you have finished, the dough is smooth and firm, ready to be left alone until the first light of dawn. You wrap it in a linen cloth and set it aside to rest. Now you must tend the ovens. They are magnificent structures, the pride of your village, built by your grandfather's hands and maintained by yours. Each one is a masterpiece of mud, brick, and clay, thick enough to hold heat for hours, their mouths blackened by countless fires. They stand like small temples, silent witnesses to the passage of time and the cycles of life. It is time to wake the fire that has slumbered through the night. In the corner of your workshop stands the oven, a magnificent construction of mud, brick, and clay, built by your grandfather's hands and maintained by yours. It is more than a tool. It is the heart of your craft, the sacred space where transformation occurs. The oven's dome rises like a small temple, its walls thick enough to hold heat for hours, its mouth blackened by countless fires. You rake the coals that have rested since last evening, stirring them back to glowing life. The embers pulse like tiny red hearts, and you feed them carefully with dried reeds and scraps of papyrus, coaxing the flames higher. The fire speaks to you in crackles and whispers, and you listen with the attention of a devoted servant. You know its moods, its needs, its language. Too hot and your bread will char on the outside while remaining raw within. To cool, and it will emerge pale and lifeless, lacking the golden crust that marks good bread. You feed the fire steadily, patiently, watching as it responds to your ministrations. The fuel for your fire comes from whatever the desert provides. Dried dung from cattle and donkeys burns slow and steady, giving reliable heat. Scraps of wood are precious and used sparingly. Sometimes you burn the chaff from threshed grain, creating a quick, hot flame, perfect for certain stages of baking. Everything has its purpose. Nothing is wasted in this land where resources are carefully hoarded against the harsh realities of drought and flood. As the fire builds, you begin to prepare the dough. The flour is milled from grain that was planted in the rich silt of the Nile Delta after the annual flood. The soil here is unlike anything you have ever known, blessed by the gods with fertility. It's dark and rich, full of nutrients that make plants grow tall and strong. You mix the flour with water from the Nile water that carries within it the blessed silt of the annual flood. Water that has traveled from the heart of Africa to nourish this narrow strip of green life. The liquid is muddy, thick with sediment, but it is life. You strain it through cloth, removing the larger particles, but much remains nutrients and minerals that will find their way into your bread. Salt comes from the northern marshes transported down the river in precious loads. A pinch is all you can afford, but it is enough to enhance the flavor and help preserve the bread in this climate where everything spoils quickly. You add a handful of sourdough starter, kept alive from batch to batch, a living culture that has been passed down through generations of bakers. This gray, bubbly mixture smells sharp and yeasty, and it will give life to your dough, making it rise and develop the complex flavors that make good bread. With the dough ready to rise and the oven slowly waking, you turn your attention to the other necessities of your trade. You dip a small stick into a pot of oil, checking its temperature. It is not quite right, so you place it near the fire, waiting for the heat to warm the metal. Soon it is hot enough, and you use it to grease the bread pan. Without oil, the bread would stick and tear as you tried to remove it from the pan. With each movement, you are acutely aware of how little time you have. The rising heat of the day saps your strength, and the dry desert air bakes the clay floor, making it a griddle beneath your feet. Soon the dough has doubled in size, light and airy, ready to be shaped. You punch it down, letting some of the air escape as you form it into loaves. Then you roll each one out, trying to make them as even as possible. The loaves are the shape of life, their surfaces smooth and taut, mirroring the world before it was rent or torn by the passage of time. You tuck the ends in neatly, ensuring that they do not split during baking. Time is short, so you do not bother with fancy braids or artistic shapes. These are simple loaves, meant to sustain you and your family through the long days and nights. You place them in the bread pan, each one fitting perfectly, and cover them with a cloth to keep them warm and moist. While they rise for the final time, you hurry to complete the other elements of your labors. You check the oven again. The fire is strong now, but the heat has not yet reached the right level. You gather flat stones to place on top of the oven, creating an insulating layer that will help hold the heat for the long baking that lies ahead. You need a sturdy poker to test the heat, and a rough wooden paddle to slide the loaves into the oven. Each tool has its place, and you move between them, a dancer in the small space, making the most of every precious moment. The dough is ready. You feel it in your bones, in the way the bread pan feels in your hands, in the pull of the dough as you test its readiness. It is time. You run your fingers lightly over the loaves, blessing them, and then you lift them carefully from the pan. Their surfaces are soft and yielding, and you know that soon they will be hard and dry. You place them on the paddle, their weight oddly satisfying in your hands. As you open the oven door, the heat hits you like a physical blow. Inside, the air is thick with the ghosts of 1,000 previous loaves, each one bearing witness to the passage of time and the cycle of life and death. You move quickly, placing the loaves in the oven and closing the door behind them. Now the work is mostly done. You can do nothing but wait, tending the fire and watching the bread rise and fall in the heat. It is a slow process, and you pace the ground beside the oven, checking it every few minutes. The heat is intense, and you wipe the sweat from your brow, feeling the grit of dust on your skin. At last, the bread is ready. You open the oven and pull out the loaves, one at a time, placing them on a rough-hewn table. They are golden-hued, their surfaces cracked and rough, their smell a mix of earth and sky. You let them cool on a rack, knowing that the hot bread will scorch your hands if you touch it now. But you cannot wait to taste the fruits of your labor. You break off a piece and eat it slowly, savoring the flavors, the texture, the very essence of the bread. It is good. The sourdough temps is balanced by the salt, and the texture is light yet filling. Close your eyes and imagine the long line of ancestors who have baked bread in this very spot. Are their spirits mingling with yours as you share in the ancient ritual? When the bread is cool enough to handle, you wrap it in linen cloths, keeping it fresh until it can be eaten. The sky above has turned from dark to light to bright blue, and the heat of the day is beginning to wane. You look around your workshop, seeing the tools, the ingredients, the ovens, and you know that you are part of something larger than yourself. You are a keeper of traditions, a weaver of life, a baker of bread. And as the sun sets over the hills, you feel the satisfaction of a job well done. The bread is ready. You are ready. You are one with the rhythm of the earth and the cycle of the seasons. The mixing is done by hand, in a wooden bowl worn smooth by countless batches of dough. You work the ingredients together, feeling the flour absorb the water, feeling the mixture change from a shaggy, uneven mass to something smoother and more cohesive. The dough is sticky and rough, very different from modern bread dough. It fights you at first, reluctant to come together, but patience and persistence gradually transform it into something workable. Kneading is a full-body exercise. You fold the dough over on itself, press it with the heels of your hands, turn it, fold it again. The rhythm becomes automatic, meditative. Your daughter helps when she can, her small hands working alongside yours, learning the feel of properly developed dough. The gluten in the ancient wheat is weaker than in modern varieties. The dough never becomes truly smooth and elastic, but it develops its own character, its own strength.
Oh.
The workshop fills with the mingled sense of fermenting dough and heating clay. Other members of your household begin to stir, your wife preparing the morning meal, your younger children emerging to help with small tasks. The baker's day starts early, but so does the baker's family. Everyone has a role to play in the daily miracle of bread. Welcome to my channel. Hi, this is your host. Let's go back in time to experience daily life in the Stone Age. Your village has been gathering for the season's last harvest festival. Men, women, and children have come together to bring in the final stores of grain and celebrate the bounty of the season. With the harvest complete, the work of preserving and processing the fruits of your labor begins. You head to your house and gather up the grains you've saved from the harvest, the precious kernels of wheat and barley that will sustain you through the winter months. Your children are helping too, bringing more grain from the storehouse and handing it to you. Together you sift the grain, removing chaff and debris, winnowing the kernels by hand. It is painstaking work, but the survival of your family depends on your efforts. Each kernel is precious. With the grain prepared, it's time to start your first fire of the day. You gather wood and set about creating a hearth fire outside your home. Using flint and steel, you manage to coax a spark into a flame. The fire grows, providing light and warmth as it crackles merrily. You tend to the fire while your partner begins grinding the grain. Hand-ground flour is hard to come by in this time period, but the work must be done if you want to bake bread. With the grain ground into a coarse flour, you mix it with water and begin the slow process of kneading dough. The dough is sticky and rough, very different from modern bread dough. It fights you at first, reluctant to come together, but patience and persistence gradually transform it into something workable. Kneading is a full-body exercise. You fold the dough over on itself, press it with the heels of your hands, turn it, fold it again. The rhythm becomes automatic, meditative. Your daughter helps when she can, her small hands working alongside yours, learning the feel of properly developed dough. The gluten in the ancient wheat is weaker than in modern varieties. The dough never becomes truly smooth and elastic, but it develops its own character, its own strength. With the bread dough set to rise, you shape some of it into flat cakes, more suited to cooking over an open fire. Others will be fashioned into round loaves, ideal for baking in clay ovens. With the loaves formed, it's time to prepare for the day ahead. You dress in layers of animal skins, making sure to be prepared for the elements. Your daughter watches as you work, eager to help in any way she can. She's too young to participate fully in the harvest, but she's learning the ways of the world by observing and assisting whenever possible. Your son is out hunting with the men of the village, hoping to bring home meat for the community feast tonight. The hunt has been lean, so you hope your son has been successful. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you finish your preparations and join the other villagers in the fields. Work continues throughout the day as everyone completes their assigned tasks. You chat with your neighbor as you work, discussing the upcoming feast and sharing gossip from around the village. With the work in the fields complete, you return home to find your son has returned from his hunt empty-handed. You exchange disappointed glances with him, knowing that tonight's feast will be less bountiful than anticipated. But there's no point in dwelling on what could have been. Day isn't over yet, and there's still time to make the most of it. You wash your face and hands in the cool water of a nearby stream, grateful for the respite from the heat of the day. The water is refreshing, but it's not cold enough to quench your thirst. You take a gourd of fermented mare's milk and drink deeply, savoring the sour taste. The adults continue on with their work, but the children have finished their tasks for the day. They chase each other through the village, their laughter echoing through the streets. The little ones tire themselves out quickly, though, and soon they're all gathered around, watching you as you prepare the evening meal. You show them how to make small game birds into kebabs, threading them onto sharp wooden skewers. The smell of roasting meat fills the air, making everyone's stomachs rumble in anticipation. The bird cooks slowly over the low fire, taking about 20 minutes to become tender and succulent. To pass the time while you wait for the food to cook, you tell stories of bravery and adventure. The children hang on every word, their eyes wide with wonder. When the bird is cooked, you serve it with roasted vegetables, and everyone digs in with a stone tool. The meal is hearty and satisfying, and you're grateful for the bounty that's been provided. After the meal, you clear away the scraps and settle in for the night. The temperature is cooler now, and you wrap yourself in a blanket made of animal hide. Your daughter curls up next to you, and you stroke her hair, humming a soft tune. The day has been long, but it's been good, no, and you're thankful for the simple pleasures of life. As the sun rises, you wake up and begin to stir. The others in your family are still asleep, but you can't stay still. There's too much to do. So you get up quietly and go to the fire pit outside your house. It's still too cold to be comfortable, so you build a small fire and sit near it. The warmth is nice, but it's not enough. You need to get moving, so you start to walk around the fire pit, stretching and flexing your muscles. As you move, you begin to feel the energy and excitement of the day building inside you. It's going to be a great day, you think with a smile. You turn and see the rising sun glinting off of something in the distance. You squint your eyes and try to get a better look, but it's too far away. Whatever it is, it's big, and you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the sight. As you watch, the object seems to grow larger, and you realize it's a bird. A huge bird with a wingspan wider than you are tall. You stand there mesmerized as the bird circles overhead, its wings catching the sunlight and making it look like a giant golden eagle. You know it's dangerous, but you can't help but feel a sense of wonder at its power. You are a hunter in a tribe of nomadic gatherers. Your people have been traveling for weeks, following the herds of wild animals that provide them with food. The journey has been long and hard, but the reward of a successful hunt will make it all worthwhile. You grip your spear tightly and scan the horizon for signs of your prey. Suddenly you see them, a herd of reindeer grazing in the distance. Give the signal to your fellow hunters, and you all creep closer, staying low to the ground and moving silently. The reindeer are unaware of the danger that's stalking them, and you know that this could be a clean kill. With a deep breath, you launch your spear, aiming for the heart of the lead reindeer. It's a perfect shot, and you watch as the animal falls to the ground. The other reindeer scatter, but you don't chase after them. You know that you have enough meat to feed your tribe for days. As you approach the fallen reindeer, you can't help but feel a sense of respect for the animal. It's a magnificent creature, and you're grateful for the life that it's given to your tribe. You begin to butcher the reindeer, cutting it up into pieces that can be easily carried back to camp. The other members of your tribe are overjoyed with the catch, and you can't help but feel a sense of pride. You've done your duty and provided for your people. That night, as you sit around the fire with your tribe, eating the roasted meat of the reindeer, you feel a sense of satisfaction. You've survived another day on the harsh and unforgiving plains, and you know that you have what it takes to survive anything. The world around me is falling apart. Buildings burn, empires crumble, barbarians rampage across the land. But here in my little corner of the world, all is well. Here in my bakery, the oven has been heating for hours now, its clay walls glowing with stored energy. Soon it will be so hot that no one could work near it. But right now, it's just warm enough for me to walk inside and rake the fire. As the owner of the only bakery in town, I have to be up early. Most people think being a baker is all about the eating part. They're wrong. Being a baker is hard, dirty work. But someone's got to do it. And with the capital at our mercy, there's no shortage of customers. Not always easy to find ingredients, though. The war with Rome has disrupted our supply lines. But today, I have flour and water and barley to feed the fires. That's all a baker needs. Well, that and a little experience. I won't say I'm an expert baker, but after years of practice, I've learned to make excellent bread. I've also learned how to read the oven's moods, which is important because you can't just shove a loaf of bread into a hot oven. You have to understand its nature. You have to feel its power and submit yourself to it. Otherwise, your bread will burn, or it won't, and cook all the way through, or it'll just fall apart. Today, the oven is calm and eager. It's had plenty of time to heat up, and it's ready to receive my offering. Before I load the first loaf onto the baking peel, I have to test the temperature. It's too high if the flour burns, and too low if it barely colors. My muscles are memory now. I throw a handful of flour into the chamber and watch as it slowly darkens to the perfect shade of brown. The fire is just right, so I grab a peel and get to work. A good baker knows that each oven is different, and I've spent a lot of time getting to know mine. I know where the hottest spots are and where the coolest are. I know how long the fire needs to burn and how long it can rest. I know what makes my oven sing and what makes it scream. And with every loaf of bread I bake, I learn a little more about it. The tools of my trade are simple. A few sturdy baskets, a large bowl, a rolling pin, and a sharp knife. I knead the dough until it's smooth and elastic. Then I let it rest while I prepare the oven. When it's time to bake, I roll out the dough and cut it into even pieces. Tuck the ends underneath and roll them out into long ropes. Then I twist the ropes together and pinch the ends to seal them. Finally, I roll the loaves out into smooth, round shapes. Before they go into the oven, I have to wait until they double in size. This takes time, but it's worth it, because the longer I wait, the lighter and fluffier the loaves will be.
Ash!
When they're ready, I gently poke them, and they spring back slowly. I dust them with flour, place them on the peels, and carry them out to the oven. I push them into the hottest part of the oven and close the door. Now I wait, checking them from time to time. When they're done, I take them out and put them on a rack to cool. The first batch is always the hardest, but once the oven is up to temperature, it's easy. I can bake dozens of loaves in a row without stopping. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the open door and out into the street. It's hard to explain how powerful that smell is. It's the smell of life itself. It's the smell of hope. It brings back childhood memories of coming home from school to the smell of mother's bread baking in the oven. It's the smell of family and tradition. It's the smell of home. It's also the smell of civilization. For thousands of years, bakers have been the providers of life. We are the ones who feed the world. Without us, there would be no cities, no empires, no history. Because it was the mastery of baking that allowed humans to settle down and build cities. It was the knowledge of how to cultivate grains and turn them into bread that allowed us to domesticate animals and develop agriculture. It was the invention of the wheel that allowed us to transport grain and flour to where it was needed most. It was the construction of roads and aqueducts that allowed us to deliver fresh bread to the masses. It was the creation of ovens that allowed us to bake bread in large quantities. Now, the secret of bread making is simple: flour, water, and fire. With these three things, you can feed the world. Of course, there's more to it than that. There's the art of milling the grain, the science of fermentation, the skill of kneading the dough. But at its heart, bread making is a simple process that anyone can do. All you need is a little bit of knowledge and a lot of practice. And the most important thing you need is an oven. Without an oven, you can't make bread. An oven is the heart of the bakery. It's where the magic happens. It's where the flour and water and fire are turned into bread. A good baker spends a lot of time with his oven. He learns its habits, its quirks, its limits. He knows how to coax the best performance out of it. He knows how to read the flames in the embers. He knows how to feel the heat radiating from the walls. He knows how to listen to the oven breathe. My oven is big and heavy. It's made of brick and stone. It's been in my family for generations. I don't know how old it is, but I know it's at least 100 years. It's seen better days, but it's still the best oven in the city. It's been fired up every day for as long as I can remember. It's never let me down. Some people might think that making bread is easy, but they couldn't be more wrong. It's a delicate balance of heat, time, and technique. It takes years to master. When I was a young man, I apprenticed under the old baker in the village. I worked for him for 5 years, learning his ways. He was a gruff, taciturn man, but he was a master baker. He knew how to coax the most flavor out of the simplest ingredients. He showed me how to make sourdough, how to bake baguettes, how to create pastries that would make the gods themselves weep with joy. Under his patient instruction, I learned how to read the oven, how to feel the dough, how to judge the perfect moment to take the bread out of the oven. It's a skill that comes with experience, a feel for the product that you just can't teach. The old baker passed away 20 years ago. I was heartbroken. He was more than just a mentor to me. He was a friend. But I knew that his spirit lived on in me. I carry his knowledge with me every day when I bake. When the bread is ready, I pull it out of the oven and place it on the cooling rack. The golden brown crust glistens in the firelight. The aroma that fills the room is simply divine. As I admire my handiwork, I think about how lucky I am to have learned from the best. It's not just the technical skills that I learned from the old baker. He taught me about the importance of tradition, about the value of hard work, about the dignity of honest labor. He taught me that baking is more than just a job. It's a way of life. It's a world that's constantly changing. It's nice to know that some things never will. The rhythm of the seasons, the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of the oven. These are the things that anchor me to the earth, that remind me of who I am and where I come from. But it's not all about the past. Baking is also about the future. Every loaf of bread that I bake today will feed someone tomorrow. Every pastry that I create will bring a smile to a child's face. In a small way, I'm helping to make the world a better place. And that's why I'm a baker. Not because it's easy, not because it's comfortable, but because it's necessary. Because someone's got to do it. Because I want to make the world a better place, one loaf of bread at a time. The first batch is out of the way, and the customers are starting to arrive. I greet them with a smile, hand them their change, and send them on their way. It's just another day at the bakery, but it's a good day. Because the oven is working, the bread is rising, and the world is right. When you think of ancient Egypt, what comes to mind? Perhaps it's the mighty pyramids, the enigmatic Sphinx, or the opulent treasures of Tutankhamun. But have you ever stopped to consider the lives of the common folk who made ancient Egyptian civilization so enduring? One such unsung hero is the baker, a profession as old as the pharaohs themselves. To be a baker in ancient Egypt is to wake before the sun, to knead dough under the soft glow of dawn. It is a ritual as old as time, a communion between man and sustenance. Your day begins not with the golden promise of sunrise, but with its pale precursor, the soft gray of pre-dawn. The eastern sky holds the promise of a new day, but for now, it is still dark enough to work. To transform the raw materials of the earth into the staff of life, you are the intermediary between the gifts of the Nile and the hunger of your community. The weight of this responsibility is not lost on you. With calloused hands, you receive the day's offering. Sacks of grain, each one a silent prayer for nourishment. Wheat from the fields of the north, emmer and spelt from the storehouses of the pharaoh. They are simple offerings, yet they carry with them the hopes and needs of a kingdom. As the morning light floods your workshop, the first customers begin to arrive. Their faces, etched with the hardships of labor, are softened by the golden aroma of fresh bread wafting from your shop. Among them, a mother cradling a sleeping infant, a father with flour on his tunic, a young woman adorned with the blue eyeliner that signifies her status as a servant in a wealthy household. Each has their own story, their own needs. You are not just a baker, you are a purveyor of life's necessities, a weaver of sustenance. With practiced hands, you begin your work. The dough, once inert, now takes shape under your touch, transforming from a shapeless mass into something more, something that will nourish and sustain. The rhythm of your work is a lullaby, a song of creation that has echoed through the ages. Every loaf you bake carries within it the story of your labor, the blessing of the gods. It's the nourishment that will sustain your community for another day. The heat of the oven is more than a necessity. It is a crucible where flour, water, and fire are transmuted into the staff of life. The ancient patterns pressed into the bread, the rosette or lotus blossom, papyrus, or crook and flail, are more than mere designs. They are talismans, amulets, that imbue the bread with protective powers, warding off evil spirits and bringing the baker's blessing to those who consume it. As the bread emerges from the oven, crusty and golden, you know that you are continuing a tradition that stretches back to the very foundations of human civilization. The art of baking, like the rising of the sun, is an eternal recurrence, a cycle without beginning and without end. In the ancient Egyptian city of Thebes, where the Nile's gentle current once carried the scent of baked bread, there existed a guild of bakers. These men, united by their trade, were led by a master baker, a sort of Yoda, grizzled and wise, whose knowledge of flour and fermentation was second only to Ra himself. Theirs was a fraternity bound not only by flour and water, but by the profound understanding that their labor was more than just a means of sustenance. It was a way of sustaining life itself. In the bustling souk, or marketplace, the baker's stall was a sanctuary. A place where weary travelers and haggling merchants alike could find respite in the aroma of fresh bread. For the Egyptians, bread was more than just food. It was a symbol of life, of the daily miracle of sustenance. The baker's role in this intricate dance of life was pivotal. He was the one who took the lifeless grains of wheat and, through the magic of his craft, transformed them into the staff of life. His ovens, fueled by the fires of the gods, were more than just sources of heat. They were vessels that imbued each loaf with the essence of Ra's life-giving power. But the baker's skill was not just in the baking, it was also in the giving. For in ancient Egypt, bread was not just a commodity, it was a social currency. The baker's generosity, like the Nile's annual floods, sustained the community through the lean times. And when the Nile was kind and the granaries overflowed, the baker's ovens blazed all the more brightly, ensuring that no one went hungry. The baker's stall in the ancient Egyptian city of Thebes was more than just a place of business. It was a cornerstone of the community, a place where the harsh realities of the desert gave way to the warmth of human connection and the simple magic of freshly baked bread. The baker in ancient Egypt wasn't just a tradesman. He was an alchemist, a life sustainer, a member of a brotherhood that stretched back to the dawn of civilization. With every loaf he baked, he wove a story of human endurance, ingenuity, and the indomitable spirit that turns the harshest grains into the staff of life. Now, dear viewer, as you savor the taste of freshly baked bread, we invite you to pause for a moment and contemplate the legacy of the ancient bakers. Just as their ovens once graced the bustling streets of Thebes, so do the ovens of today's world keep the flame of tradition alive. In every slice you enjoy, you partake in a timeless ritual that echoes the rhythms of the Nile and the generosity of the sun god. So let the aroma of baking bread be a reminder of the enduring human spirit, the alchemy of flour and water, and the profound impact of those who, like the ancient bakers, transform the simplest ingredients into the staff of life. And so, under the watchful eye of Queen Hatshepsut, the ovens of Egypt continued to burn steadily, providing not just sustenance but a sense of security to her people. Her skilled bakers knead their dough with practiced hands, knowing that each loaf they produce contributes to the well-being of a nation. And while the queen's gaze may be distant, focused on trade expeditions to distant lands and monumental building projects that immortalize her reign, she also understands that her legacy will ultimately be judged by the simple "did her people eat?" Let us now leave behind the world of ancient Egypt and travel across the Mediterranean to the Roman Empire. Picture with me the bustling Forum Magnum, the heart of Rome where merchants hawk their wares. Senators debate matters of state, and the scent of fresh bread mingles with the aroma of roasting meat and spices. We have arrived here in the year 80 CE, just after the completion of the great fire that nearly leveled Rome. Amidst the smoldering ruins, a new bakery rises, owned by a former slave named Marcus. Now freed and on his own, Marcus runs his business with the efficiency born of years spent laboring under another's watchful eye. His shop bustles with activity. Slaves measure out flour and water with practiced hands, while freeborn men shape loaves of bread and stoke the ovens. In the center hangs a fresco depicting scenes from the life of the baker's patron, the goddess Ceres, the embodiment of agriculture and bounty. As Marcus goes about his day, he might stop to admire this mural, a reminder of the importance of his craft. pleasing series means prosperity for the coming harvest and an end to the lean years brought on by the war with Greece. If he does not honor the goddess properly, if his bread is not blessed before baking, the results could be disastrous. He remembers how during the recent years of grain shortage, Emperor Nero had stepped in, using grain from the public storehouses to keep the populace fed. Now the emperor's face adorns every loaf of bread, a reminder to all that the success of his reign depends in part on the skill of lowly bakers like Marcus. For a Roman emperor, the cost of flour and grain is a significant expense, but it is worth every sestertius to keep the masses fed and stave off unrest. When Marcus prepares his ovens for the night, he carefully banks the coals, ensuring they'll be hot and ready for the next day's baking. He knows that the rising sun will bring more customers, more demand for the staff of life. And as long as the grain ships arrive safely in the harbors, as long as the emperor's face smiles benignly down from the mural, Marcus can go to sleep secure in the knowledge that his place in the world is small but vital. He is a cog in the machine that keeps Rome running, a small part of a vast empire, yet essential to its survival nonetheless. Fast forward several centuries and we find ourselves in the cobbled streets of medieval Paris. Before us stands the home and workshop of Catherine de Medici, a baker known throughout the city for the quality of her bread. Catherine's days begin early, long before the sun has chased away the chill of the French night. She kneads her dough with a practiced hand, the rhythm of her movements as familiar to her as the prayers she whispers to Saint Honorette, the patron saint of bakers. Her loaves emerge from the oven, golden-hued and smelling of yeast and flour, destined for the tables of some of Paris's most important citizens. One such customer is none other than the king himself, Louis X. Catherine's bread is renowned for its lightness, its ability to soak up the juices of a rich stew without becoming soggy. It is a reputation that has taken years to build, and one loaf at a time. The delivery of the king's order is a solemn affair, accompanied by two of Catherine's most trusted employees, Jean, her bookkeeper, and Pierre, her head baker. They travel to the Louvre, where King Louis awaits them in his solar. The transaction is swift and to the point. The king inspects the loaves, nodding his approval, and pays Catherine's representative the exorbitant price she has marked on the bill. This transaction, like so many others, is not just about the exchange of goods for money, but about the maintenance of an intricate social order. Each interaction reinforces the hierarchy of medieval France, where a baker, however skilled, must still bow to the whims of the crown. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, and several centuries later, Sarah Josephine's bake shop hums with activity. In this modest establishment on the corner of Bleecker Street, the air is thick with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the chatter of Yiddish. Sarah, a recent immigrant from Eastern Europe, has brought with her the traditions of her homeland, including recipes passed down through generations of women in her family. Her rye bread, with its dense, moist crumb and distinctive sourness, is already a favorite among the neighborhood's Jewish community. But Sarah dreams of more. She wants her bakery to be known throughout New York City for the quality of her baking. To achieve this, she must perfect her recipes, sourcing the finest ingredients and mastering the art of baking with minimal waste. Flour and water, yeast and salt, these are the basic elements of her craft. Yet it is in the precise measurements and techniques that Sarah's true skill lies. She experiments with different types of flour, seeking the perfect balance of protein and starch. She tests the temperature of the water, the strength of the yeast, the amount of time needed for fermentation. Every loaf she bakes is a lesson, every batch of bread a step closer to perfection. In the cramped quarters of her bakery, Sarah is engaged in a silent competition, a battle to create the best loaf of bread she possibly can. She is driven not by external forces or the whims of royalty, but by an inner need for excellence, a desire to honor the baking traditions of her ancestors, while adding her unique touch to each loaf. Her ambition is not to feed a king or win a royal favor, but simply to serve the best bread she can to whoever walks through her door. In the cobbled streets of Florence, the air is alive with the sounds of hammers ringing against metal and chisels, etching intricate designs into stone. The year is 1420, and the heart of Florence throbs with artistic energy. Amidst this creative fervor, a young man named Francesco stands out. His frame is wiry, his movements precise and economical, his eyes filled with a fierce intensity. Francesco is a journeyman, having completed his apprenticeship under a master sculptor. But unlike many of his peers who dream of creating towering marble masterpieces, Francesco's ambition is more modest, more rooted in the everyday. He finds beauty in the mundane, inspiration in the ordinary. His sculptures are not the idealized forms of gods and heroes, but the everyday objects that surround him. Among his most exquisite works is a series of reliefs depicting the tools of a baker's trade, each tool rendered with such accuracy and detail that they seem almost tangible. There's the wooden rolling pin, the flour-dusted bread knife, the metal oven poker, and over it all hovers the baker's hat, a symbol of the quiet dignity of this often overlooked profession. To the casual observer, these sculptures may appear simple, even quaint. But to those who knew Francesco's work, they revealed the depth of his talent and the originality of his vision. He didn't shy away from the commonplace. Instead, he elevated it, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. Though he never achieved the fame of some of his contemporaries, his sculptures of bakers and their tools stand as a testament to the beauty he found in the everyday, quiet revolution in a time of grandiosity. His work is a tribute to the unsung heroes of society, the bakers who, like the sculptor, find their reward not in fleeting fame, but in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The story of Francesco reminds us that greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's found in the quiet corners, in the humble acts of everyday life. From the grand halls of ancient Egypt to the bustling markets of medieval Paris, the bakers of history have played a pivotal role in shaping our world. Their ovens have not just warmed their communities, they've sustained them. Their loaves have been the staff of life, the foundation of empires, the centerpiece of rituals. They've fed kings and commoners, gods and heroes. And when the world's fate hung in the balance, they kept baking, ensuring that the next day would dawn with the promise of a fresh loaf. So the next time you break bread with your loved ones, take a moment to appreciate the legacy of the bakers. Their quiet revolution that has fed the world and shaped history one loaf at a time. Their story is a reminder that true power often lies not in conquest or monuments, but in the quiet art of feeding a nation. Thank you for watching this episode. And if you enjoyed this culinary journey through time, we invite you to subscribe. Your support allows us to continue sharing these stories and bring more historical tales directly to your device. Till next time, stay hungry and keep learning. This is the long-awaited sequel to our first episode about Queen Hatshepsut. If you haven't seen it yet, then go check it out before coming back here. Hatshepsut is remembered today as one of Egypt's most successful pharaohs, a ruler whose 22-year reign was marked by unprecedented peace and prosperity. But Hatshepsut's vision extends beyond mere maintenance of existing systems. As she gradually assumes the full powers of pharaoh, adorning herself with the false beard of kingship, commissioning statues that show her in the traditional pose of divine rulers, she begins to implement policies that will transform Egypt's relationship with food production and distribution. She understands something that many rulers throughout history have failed to grasp: that a well-fed population is a peaceful population. That investment in agriculture yields returns far more valuable than the spoils of war. While other pharaohs dream of military conquest and territorial expansion, Hatshepsut focuses her attention on the quieter victories of improved irrigation, expanded granaries, and more efficient distribution. Networks that ensure even the humblest baker in the most distant village has access to quality grain. Her economic policies represent a radical shift in thinking for Egypt. Up until Hatshepsut's reign, the pharaoh was primarily seen as the supreme dispenser of grain, someone who doled out rations to keep the populace from starving. The pharaoh's granaries were the safety net that prevented people from dying of starvation during times of famine or poor harvest, a sort of early welfare system. Hatshepsut realized that this reactive approach to food distribution wasn't sustainable. It was like trying to put out a fire by throwing sand on it. The underlying problem was still there, and it could flare up again at any time. Instead, she decided to tackle the root cause of the issue, working to increase the amount of arable land, improve planting techniques, expand storage capacity, and develop more efficient transportation routes so that grain could be moved quickly and easily from where it was grown to where it was needed. The most visible aspect of this transformation was the construction of new irrigation systems in the Nile Delta and along the Theban necropolis. New canals were dug, existing ones were widened, Elaborate systems of water gates and siphons were built to distribute water to every farmer who needed it. These projects not only increased the amount of land that could be used for farming, but also made it possible to grow more crops per acre by providing water to fields at precisely the right times. By carefully controlling the flow of the river's bounty, Hatshepsut's engineers were able to maximize the productivity of each harvest. At the same time, Hatshepsut embarked on a massive program of building new granaries. Unlike the old ones, which were often little more than storehouses, these were designed to preserve grain over the long term, keeping it fresh and usable even through years of plenty, so that they would be ready for times of need. Many of these granaries were built near the new irrigation projects, making it easier to move grain from the fields to the stores. Others were constructed along the main roads leading out of the cities, ensuring that travelers and merchants had access to food while they were away from home. But Hatshepsut's most innovative solution to the problem of food distribution was the creation of a new corps of distributors, officials whose job it was to travel around the country, assessing the needs of each region and shipping in grain from the central stores whenever a community ran low. This system, which was essentially a kind of traveling pantry, allowed Hatshepsut to feed her people no matter where they lived or what crops they grew. To fund these ambitious projects, Hatshepsut drew on the wealth of Egypt's new trade network. In the years before her reign, Egyptian merchants had begun exploring the coast of Africa in search of new sources of incense and gold. Their ships had reached the land of Punt, a mysterious realm that may have been located in present-day Somalia or Ethiopia. There, the Egyptians found not only the precious commodities they sought, but also new varieties of grain and improved techniques for food preservation. With the help of the Puan traders, Hatshepsut began importing new types of wheat and barley to Egypt, grains that were higher yielding and easier to process than the native varieties. At the same time, she adopted the Puan method of preserving grain by drying it in the sun and storing it in airtight containers, which allowed her granaries to hold more grain for longer periods of time. These new grains and preservation techniques were a boon to the Egyptian people, but Hatshepsut didn't stop there. She also commissioned a series of expeditions to the Levant, the eastern Mediterranean region that included modern-day Syria and Lebanon. These trips were led by her trusted general Hatneb, who was the first woman to ever hold that title. They sailed around the African coast, following the same route that the Egyptian explorers had taken to Punt, then headed north along the coast of Asia Minor, until they reached the land of the Phoenicians. Their Hatneb purchased new types of ovens that burned fuel more efficiently, improved tools for processing flour, and even learned how to make bread with multiple layers, a technique that was unheard of in Egypt before his return. With these new resources in hand, Hatshepsut was able to feed her people better and more cheaply than any pharaoh before her. She developed a new type of ration that consisted of bread made from the finest imported flour, grain that was still warm from the oven, along with a small amount of oil and beer. This was a huge improvement over the standard issue rations of previous pharaohs, which were typically just a few handfuls of grain per person per day. The quality and variety of the food that Hatshepsut provided to her people was unprecedented. And it wasn't just the quantity and variety of the food that made it so remarkable, but also the way it was prepared. Hatshepsut understood the importance of good cooking and made sure that her kitchens were staffed with the best chefs in the land. They created new recipes using the imported ingredients and local produce. And they developed new ways to cook traditional Egyptian dishes. For example, they introduced the use of spices like cinnamon and cloves, which were imported from Punt to add flavor to their breads. And they learned how to make a type of flatbread that could be cooked in the new ovens and stored for long periods of time without spoiling. This innovation helped to solve the problem of food waste that had plagued previous pharaohs. In addition to improving the quality and variety of food available to her people, Hatshepsut also made it easier for them to get the food they needed. She reformed the system of markets so that vendors could sell their goods at fixed prices, making food more affordable for everyone. And she established a network of bakeries in every town and village, which made fresh bread available to all Egyptians regardless of their income or social status. It's no surprise then that Hatshepsut's subjects loved her. She was the first pharaoh to make the needs of her people a priority, and she showed them that she cared about their well-being by improving the quality of their food, making it more affordable and accessible. In turn, her subjects gave her their loyalty and support, which allowed her to rule for 22 years without interference or rebellion. And that's not all. Hatshepsut's focus on agriculture and food production was not just about feeding her people. She saw the connection between physical nourishment and spiritual well-being. The temples she built were not just monuments to divine power, but functioning centers of food distribution. The priests who served in these temples were also the keepers of agricultural knowledge, maintaining the ancient wisdom about planting cycles, flood patterns, and the proper rituals that ensured the continued fertility of the land. Her most famous mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, carved directly into the living rock of the Theban Hills, includes extensive relief carvings that celebrate the abundance of her reign. These are not the typical scenes of military triumph found in other royal monuments, but detailed depictions of the peaceful arts of agriculture and food preparation. Here, carved in stone for eternity, are bakers kneading dough, farmers harvesting grain, brewers preparing the beer that serves as liquid bread for the masses. In fact, Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is considered a masterpiece of ancient architecture and a testament to her legacy as a great pharaoh. The temple's design is unique in several ways. It is the only major temple in Egypt that was built into the side of a hill rather than on top of a flat surface. This allowed Hatshepsut's architects to create a series of terraces that cascaded down the slope, giving the impression of a garden growing out of the mountainside. The temple's interior is decorated with some of the finest reliefs in all of Egypt, depicting scenes from Hatshepsut's life and reign, including her famous journey to the land of Punt. Despite its grandeur, Hatshepsut's temple was also designed to be a place of refuge and healing. It contained a large courtyard with a pool in the center, surrounded by colonnades that provided shade from the hot Egyptian sun. This was a place where pilgrims could come to rest and be rejuvenated before continuing their journey. In addition to its religious functions, Hatshepsut's temple also served as a storehouse for grain and other provisions, which were distributed to travelers and pilgrims who needed them. This was in keeping with Hatshepsut's overall philosophy of government, which emphasized the importance of taking care of the people. In many ways, Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is a microcosm of her reign, a time when Egypt flourished, and its people thrived due to the pharaoh's focus on agriculture and food production. Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is a reminder of the importance of taking care of the people, ensuring that everyone has access to the basic necessities of life, and recognizing the connection between physical nourishment and spiritual well-being. In the heart of ancient Egypt, nestled between the mythical borders of the known world, stood a monument that echoed the very soul of a nation. Its colossal form, a testament to human endeavor, was forever bound to the legacy of a remarkable ruler. But how did Hatshepsut's reign shape the everyday lives of ordinary Egyptians? What was the significance of bread in Egyptian society? How did it influence trade, religion, and power? And how did Hatshepsut's relationship with bread making shape her legacy? Now let's get back to our story. The temple workshops attached to this monument employ hundreds of bakers, their daily production supporting not just the religious ceremonies, but also providing food for the workers who maintain this complex. These institutional bakeries operate on a scale that dwarfs our individual baker's workshop. Multiple ovens fire constantly, their brick kilns fueled by the sun's abundant energy. Teams of workers grind grain in a carefully orchestrated series of shifts, their rhythmic work punctuated by the measured ring of metal tools. At the center of it all, a scribe meticulously keeps records, noting the number of loaves produced and distributed, each loaf a small miracle of flour, water, and fire. Never loses sight of the individual human element in this vast system. The policies she implements ensure that even the humblest baker has access to quality grain at fair prices, that the techniques and tools of bread making continue to improve, and that the knowledge passed down through generations of bakers is preserved and enhanced. During her 22-year reign, Egypt experiences a period of unprecedented prosperity and stability. The Nile floods arrive on schedule, the harvests are abundant, and the granaries remain full. Trade flourishes because merchants know they can rely on Egyptian bread to sustain their journeys. Artisans create magnificent works because they need not worry about their next meal. Scribes compose literature and mathematics because their society has achieved the kind of food security that allows for the luxury of intellectual pursuits. This prosperity is not accidental. It results from Hatshepsut's careful attention to the mundane details of governance, ensuring that irrigation canals are properly maintained, that roads remain passable for grain transport, that provincial governors understand their responsibility to support local food production. She creates what we might today call a sustainable agricultural system, one that works with the natural rhythms of the Nile rather than against them. This stability and prosperity allowed Hatshepsut to pursue ambitious building projects, most notably the construction of a magnificent temple complex at Dir el-Bahari. Imagine standing before this monumental gateway, its towering columns adorned with intricate carvings of protective deities and ancestral kings. Passing through the gateway, you find yourself in a bustling marketplace, a microcosm of Egyptian life during Hatshepsut's reign. Stalls overflow with goods from across the known world, from the finest linens to exotic spices and precious metals. Merchants from distant lands, including the legendary land of Punt, have braved perilous journeys to trade their wares here. You might overhear snatches of conversation in foreign tongues as merchants bargain with Egyptians over the value of ivory, incense, or gold. This exchange is made possible in part by the very bread that sustains these travelers. For bread not only nourishes the body, it becomes a metaphorical currency that sustains life's journey. But this monument is more than just a symbol of trade and exchange. It's a testament to Hatshepsut's enduring legacy. Her face, serene and resolute, is carved into the stone, a silent witness to the passage of time. The very act of building this monument required an organized labor force, skilled artisans, and a steady supply of resources, all made possible by a reliable food supply. Farmers cultivated the fields, producing the grain that would sustain the workforce. Bakers, working in communal ovens, transformed that grain into nourishing bread, which in turn sustained the laborers who built and decorated the monument. In this way, the creation of this monument was a microcosm of Hatshepsut's broader impact on Egyptian society. As you continue your exploration of the complex, you might pause to admire a team of oxen, their strong bodies adorned with colorful garlands. Oxen played a vital role in Egyptian agriculture. Pulling plows and carts, they helped farmers cultivate the land and transport goods to market. Their importance in society is reflected in the numerous depictions of oxen in Egyptian art, including the iconic image of the goddess Hathor, often shown with the ears and horns of an ox. Just as the pharaoh was believed to embody the divine on earth, the ox represented the life-giving forces of nature, connecting the human and the divine realms. Imagine witnessing a traditional Egyptian festival, the air filled with the scent of roasting meat and freshly baked bread. Egyptians celebrated various festivals throughout the year, honoring their gods and commemorating historical events. One such celebration could be in honor of Osiris, the god of the dead and rebirth, whose annual resurrection was a central part of Egyptian mythology. During the festival, you might see a procession winding its way through the streets, carrying a symbolic coffin representing Osiris's body. The faithful would have participated in rituals and offerings, hoping for Osiris's blessings and protection. And at the heart of these celebrations, the community would have shared a great feast laden with offerings of bread and beer. Symbolic representations of life and nourishment in a world where the line between life and death was often blurred. Amidst the festivities, you might have encountered wandering storytellers, their voices echoing tales of gods and heroes that had been passed down through generations. Storytellers played a vital role in ancient Egyptian culture, preserving history and mythology, entertaining their audiences with dramatic flair. They might have regaled listeners with the story of Isis and Osiris, the myth that underpins many of Egypt's religious beliefs and practices. These myths were not mere stories, but a framework for understanding the world, offering guidance and comfort in a society deeply connected to the rhythms of nature and the mysteries of the afterlife. In the bustling marketplace, you might have noticed the presence of scribes, their quills scratching on papyrus, recording transactions and keeping accounts. Scribes were highly respected members of society, responsible for managing records, collecting taxes, and drafting official documents. Their ability to read and write made them essential to the administration of the state. In fact, Hatshepsut's reign saw a flourishing of literature and record-keeping, with scribes playing a crucial role in documenting her achievements and preserving them for posterity. As you navigate through the vibrant scenes of Hatshepsut's Egypt, it's important to remember that while grand monuments and bustling markets capture the imagination, it was the everyday lives of ordinary Egyptians that truly sustained the greatness of her empire. From the farmers who tilled the soil to the bakers who turned grain into sustenance, each person played a vital role. Bread, as the staff of life, was at the center of this intricate web of existence. The religious dimension of Hatshepsut's relationship with food production reflects the deep Egyptian understanding that bread making is a sacred act. As pharaoh, she serves as the earthly representative of the gods who ensure fertility and abundance. The daily offerings of bread and beer in temples throughout her kingdom are not mere ritual, but practical demonstrations of the covenant between divine and mortal, between ruler and ruled, between those who govern and those who labor with their hands. It was during Hatshepsut's reign that the famous Temple of Karnak was constructed. This sprawling complex, with its towering columns and enigmatic statues, served as a hub of religious activity. Inside the temple, you might have witnessed priests performing rituals, their chants echoing through the vast halls as they sought to connect with the gods. The air would have been thick with incense, the scent mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread offered as part of the ceremonies. These rituals were not just acts of worship, but a way to ensure the continued prosperity of the kingdom. As you stand before the majestic Temple of Karnak, you realize that Hatshepsut's legacy extends far beyond the realm of bread making. Her reign marked a golden age in Egyptian history, a time of peace, prosperity, and cultural achievement. The secrets of her success lay in her ability to balance tradition and innovation, to embrace the wisdom of the past while looking towards the future. Hatshepsut's story reminds us that true leadership is not just about power, but about service, about working tirelessly to improve the lives of those you govern and ensuring that the flame of progress burns brightly for generations to come. Her policies aimed to ensure that the burdens of labor were shared fairly and that the rewards of their efforts were equally distributed. This commitment to social justice created a sense of unity and cooperation among the populace, fostering a spirit of community that was essential to the kingdom's well-being. One example of Hatshepsut's dedication to her people was her personal involvement in solving problems that directly affected their daily lives. She took an active interest in issues such as land disputes, unfair labor practices, and the distribution of resources. Demonstrating that she genuinely cared about the welfare of her subjects, this accessibility and willingness to engage with the common people set her apart from some of her predecessors, establishing a deeper connection with the hearts and minds of her subjects. In addition to her social reforms, Hatshepsut also implemented measures to promote economic stability and growth. Recognizing that a thriving economy was fundamental to the happiness of her people, she introduced policies that encouraged trade, regulated markets, and protected the rights of merchants and artisans, creating an environment that allowed businesses to flourish. By fostering economic prosperity, Hatshepsut ensured that her subjects had access to the resources they needed to live comfortable lives. Another aspect of Hatshepsut's reign that resonated with her people was her unwavering commitment to the arts and culture. She understood that a society that valued beauty, creativity, and learning was a society that was rich in spirit and intellect. Hatshepsut's patronage of the arts led to the construction of magnificent temples, the creation of exquisite works of sculpture, and the advancement of fields like medicine and astronomy. She encouraged the pursuit of knowledge, believing that an educated populace was essential to the long-term prosperity of Egypt. Furthermore, Hatshepsut was deeply invested in the well-being of her subjects, particularly their health and welfare. She established hospitals and clinics, providing free medical care to the sick and injured, and implemented public works projects that created jobs and provided income to those in need. By addressing the basic needs of her people and investing in their future, Hatshepsut earned their loyalty and gratitude. And as you stand here, surrounded by the echoes of a glorious past, you realize that Hatshepsut's legacy is more than just bread and prosperity. It's a testament to the power of good governance, the importance of social justice, and the transformative impact a compassionate leader can have on the course of history. Her story is a reminder that the true measure of a great pharaoh lies not in the monuments that endure, but in the lives that flourished under their rule. The Nile flows like molten gold as the sun beats down upon the Egyptian countryside. Along its banks and the fields and along the river, life teems. Men, women, and children work together, harvesting the fruits of their labor under the watchful gaze of the gods. They tend their flocks, till their fields, and watch over their herds, all the while preparing for the flooding season. When the river will reclaim some lands and enrich others, their labor is hard, but it is rewarded. Egypt is a land of plenty. The bounty of the Nile ensures it. At the center of this prosperity stands the pharaoh, the living embodiment of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. She is the link between the gods and the people, the guarantor of order and the dispenser of their blessings. And among the pharaohs, one stands out for her peaceful and prosperous reign, Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who ruled Egypt nearly 3,500 years ago. But beyond her impressive titles and accomplishments, she was a leader who understood the importance of something as basic as bread, the staff of life itself. Her trading expeditions brought back not just luxury goods, but also new grains and spices that would enrich the diet of her people. And as these exotic flavors found their way into Egyptian kitchens, they transformed a simple piece of bread into an experience that engaged all the senses. Coriander seeds, cumin, and other aromatics found their way into Egyptian bread, adding complexity and flavor to what had been simple sustenance. It may seem like a small detail in the grand tapestry of history, but this innovation did not go unnoticed. It filtered down from the royal kitchens to the workshops of ordinary bakers, improving the quality of daily bread for people at every level of society. Imagine walking into a bakery and being greeted by the intoxicating aroma of freshly baked bread, each loaf infused with the warm embrace of coriander and the earthy depth of cumin. As you break off a piece and take a bite, the flavors dance on your palate, creating a symphony of tastes that tantalize your senses. This seemingly ordinary bread becomes a culinary adventure, a testament to the pharaoh's vision of enriching the lives of her subjects through the simple act of baking. But the impact of Hatshepsut's love for bread goes beyond the introduction of new spices. You see, during her reign, Egypt enjoyed a period of unprecedented peace and stability, allowing for advancements in various fields, including baking. It was during this era that potters developed new designs for ovens that heated more evenly and retained temperature longer, ensuring that every loaf emerged from the oven to perfection. Metalworkers crafted better tools for mixing and shaping dough, making the baker's work more efficient and precise. Engineers designed improved grain storage facilities, protecting the flour and grain from pests and moisture, which could have ruined the final product. These innovations transformed the baking process, making it not only more efficient, but also more reliable and consistent. These developments are not isolated incidents, but rather part of a larger trend during Hatshepsut's reign. Under her wise and benevolent rule, Egypt flourished. Economy thrived, trade routes expanded, and the arts and architecture flourished. People felt secure in their villages, allowing them to focus on improving their skills and creating new things. In this atmosphere of stability and prosperity, bakers were able to experiment and innovate, taking the craft of baking to new heights. It was no longer just about producing a basic loaf of bread. It was about elevating the baking experience, making each loaf a masterpiece. In the bustling workshops, the rhythmic grinding of stones and the kneading of dough created a comforting melody. Each baker took pride in his craft, striving to create the perfect loaf that would satisfy the hunger of those who consumed it. They experimented with different combinations of flour, water, and yeast, trying to achieve the perfect texture and flavor. Some bakers focused on creating breads with intricate designs, while others concentrated on developing new and exciting flavors. In the royal kitchens, the head baker supervised a team of skilled workers who prepared bread for the pharaoh and her guests. They had access to the finest ingredients and the most advanced tools, and they were expected to produce the most exquisite breads imaginable. Using recipes passed down from previous generations, they created elaborate loaves decorated with spices, nuts, and fruits. The royal bakers were not just responsible for preparing the bread, but also for presenting it in a way that was pleasing to the eye and fit for the pharaoh. In the homes of ordinary Egyptians, baking was a daily ritual. Women would wake up before sunrise to prepare bread for their families. They would gather their ingredients, which might include emmer, wheat, barley, or lentils, and start the fire in the small clay oven in their courtyard. As the dough rose, the women would go about their other chores, knowing that when it was time to bake, the smell of fresh bread would fill their home. The process of baking was not just a means to put food on the table, but also a way to bring families together. Children would help their mothers knead the dough, and once the bread was baked, they would gather around the table to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The simple act of baking bread became a bonding experience, creating lasting memories. But Hatshepsut's influence on baking went beyond the introduction of new grains and spices and the flourishing of the craft. Her impact resonated deeply within the hearts and stomachs of her people, for Hatshepsut understood that the true essence of a civilization lay in its people's daily lives. While her monumental building projects and trading expeditions were undoubtedly impressive, it was her attention to the smallest details that truly set her apart as a remarkable pharaoh. Imagine a hot summer day in ancient Egypt. The sun beats down on the bustling streets of Thebes as people go about their daily activities. The air is filled with the sounds of vendors hawking their wares, children playing, and the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Amidst this lively scene, a group of friends, Jedediah, Nefer, and Amenhotep, sit down at a bakery to enjoy a well-earned rest. They sink their teeth into the warm, crusty bread and savor the explosion of flavors that dances on their palates. The coriander adds a bright, citrusy note that invigorates their taste buds, while the cumin brings a warm, earthy depth that anchors the flavor. The bread is not just sustenance, it's an experience that engages all their senses. As they munch on their bread, the friends engage in lively conversation. They discuss the latest news from the royal court, gossip about their neighbors, and share stories of their adventures. The bakery, with its warm atmosphere and delectable bread, provides the perfect setting for their camaraderie. They laugh, they joke, and they reminisce about old times, forging bonds of friendship that will last a lifetime. Hatshepsut's love for her people extended to every aspect of their lives, and she understood the significance of bringing joy and comfort to their everyday experiences. By introducing new grains and spices to Egyptian cuisine, she enriched their lives and created moments of happiness that transcended the boundaries of time. Her passion for exploration led to the establishment of trading routes to distant lands, bringing exotic ingredients to the kitchens of Egypt. The introduction of coriander and cumin, among other spices, transformed the culinary landscape, adding new dimensions of flavor to traditional dishes. These spices not only tantalize the taste buds, but also symbolize Hatshepsut's connection to the wider world. The very act of sharing bread, a staple of Egyptian culture, became a celebration of cultural exchange and the fusion of flavors. Hatshepsut's legacy goes beyond the monuments and treasures she amassed. It is deeply rooted in the lives of her people. Her efforts to improve their everyday experiences, including the simple act of baking bread, continue to resonate through the ages. The introduction of new grains and spices like coriander and cumin not only enriched their diet, but also brought communities together. In the bustling bakeries and in the cozy kitchens of ordinary homes, Hatshepsut's influence is felt in every crumb. Her love for her people, her passion for exploration, and her commitment to improving their lives are woven into the very fabric of Egyptian culture. And so we come to the end of our story, where the aromas of coriander and cumin mingle with the laughter of friends and the warmth of community. Hatshepsut's love for her people, embodied in the simple act of baking bread, creates a legacy that transcends time. In the heart of every Egyptian, there is a story waiting to be told. A tale of a pharaoh who understood that true greatness lies in the smallest details, the taste of bread, the bond of friendship, and the richness of community. These are the threads that make up the tapestry of human connection. And Hatshepsut's love for her people is the guiding light that illuminates the way. When Hatshepsut finally passes into the afterlife, joining the eternal company of gods and pharaohs, she leaves behind an Egypt where the art of bread making has reached new heights of sophistication and reliability. The techniques developed during her reign, the trading relationships she established, the infrastructure she built, all of these continue to benefit the humble bakers who carry on their work in workshops throughout the kingdom. The ovens are hot, the flour is fresh, and the loaves are rising in the bakery at the center of the Egyptian capital. Men, women, and children are working together to shape the dough, slap it into loaves, and poke it full of holes. They sing as they work, celebrating the bounty of the Nile and the pharaoh who keeps them fed. This is the daily life of an Egyptian baker during the 15th century BC. And while the work is hard, the people are happy. You see, over the past few decades, things have been changing in Egypt. For the first time in centuries, there is a woman pharaoh. Hatshepsut came to power promising to restore order to the kingdom and prosperity to the people. And so far, she's keeping that promise. Trade is booming. New building projects are underway and food is plentiful. People of Egypt are some of the luckiest in the ancient world. But how did Hatshepsut do it? What did this female ruler do to turn around a kingdom on the brink of collapse and make it the breadbasket of the ancient world? To answer that question, we need to go back to the beginning of Hatshepsut's reign. When she took the throne, Egypt was in bad shape. The economy was in sharp decline. The treasury was nearly empty, and the granaries were bare. But Hatshepsut was determined to fix it. She launched a series of ambitious building projects, including a new palace and a new temple to the god Amen. These projects employed thousands of people, but they also produced thousands of loaves of bread, because every building project needs a baker. In fact, the demand for bread was so high that Hatshepsut had to import flour from other parts of the kingdom. This led to the establishment of trading relationships between the capital and the provinces, which resulted in even more prosperity. After all, trade is the engine of any good economy. But Hatshepsut didn't stop there. She also introduced a number of new technologies, including a water-powered sawmill that could grind grain much faster than the traditional hand-powered mills. She also developed a new type of oven that was more efficient and could produce more bread in less time. In addition, she created a network of roads and bridges that allowed the flour and bread to be transported quickly and easily throughout the kingdom. And then there are the bakers themselves. Hatshepsut understood that the success of her reign depended on the success of her bakers, and so she made sure to give them the resources they needed to succeed. She provided them with the latest technology, the best ingredients, and the most reliable transportation system. And in return, they gave her the one thing she needed most: bread. Lots and lots of bread. In fact, under Hatshepsut's rule, Egypt became one of the most bread-secure kingdoms in the ancient world. There was always enough bread to go around, no matter how many building projects or military campaigns were underway. This was a remarkable achievement, considering that Egypt was an agricultural country. The success of its bread-making industry depended on the whims of the Nile River. But Hatshepsut's innovations changed all that. She had essentially created a system that could produce and distribute bread no matter what the Nile was doing. It was a system that would ensure the survival of her people, no matter how many challenges they faced. It's a legacy that lives on in the small details of daily life in Egypt. Like the smell of baking bread in the morning, or the sound of children singing as they work in the fields. These are the things that make life worth living, the things that make Egypt the greatest kingdom in the ancient world. They're all made possible by the humble baker. And Hatshepsut finally passes into the afterlife, joining the eternal company of gods and pharaohs. She leaves behind a Egypt where the art of bread making has reached new heights of sophistication and reliability. The techniques developed during her reign, the trading relationships she established, the infrastructure she built, all of these continue to benefit. The humble bakers who carry on their work in workshops throughout the kingdom, their daily labor, connecting them to both their mortal queen and their immortal gods.
As we journey deeper into the mysteries of ancient Egyptian bread making, let us descend now into the cool, shadowed chambers beneath the desert sands, where the living prepared elaborate provisions for the dead. Here, in tombs carved from solid rock and sealed for eternity, we discover that bread was not merely sustenance for earthly life, but the essential nourishment that would carry souls through the perilous journey to the afterlife. The relationship between bread and death in ancient Egypt runs deeper than simple provision for a long journey. The Egyptians understood that the act of baking itself was a transformation. Grain died to become flour. Flour died to become dough. Dough died in the fire to become bread. This cycle of death and rebirth made bread the perfect symbol for the soul's own journey through dissolution and renewal, making it indispensable for anyone hoping to achieve eternal life. Picture yourself standing in the tomb of Ramesses Roman III, nearly 3,000 years after it was sealed, your torch casting dancing shadows on walls covered with intricate hieroglyphic scenes. Here, carved in stone and painted in colors that still glow with startling vibrancy, are detailed depictions of bakers at work. These are not mere decorations, but but essential instructions, a kind of eternal cookbook that would ensure the deceased pharaoh would never lack for bread in the afterlife. The tomb paintings show every step of the baking process with meticulous accuracy. You can see workers grinding grain on the same type of querns used by our living baker, their bodies bent to the same repetitive motions that would have been familiar to any Egyptian of their era. The artists who created these scenes understood that accuracy was crucial. The magic of these images depended on their ability to recreate the actual process of bread making in the realm of the dead. Other tomb paintings show the mixing of dough, the kneading process, the shaping of loaves into the animal forms, and geometric patterns that held special significance for the afterlife journey. Some loaves are shaped like sacred animals, ibises, crocodiles, bulls, each form carrying its own protective power. Others are molded into hieroglyphic symbols that spell out prayers and invocations, so that the very act of consuming the bread would speak protective words into the mouth of the deceased. But these tomb paintings are more than artistic representations. Archaeological excavations have revealed actual bakeries built within tomb complexes, complete with functioning ovens designed to produce bread for funeral ceremonies and ongoing memorial feasts. These are not miniature symbolic structures, but full-scale working bakeries. Their ovens large enough to produce hundreds of loaves for the elaborate funeral banquets that could last for days. The bakery discovered in the tomb complex of Queen Nefertiti includes multiple ovens of different sizes and designs, each optimized for different types of bread. The largest oven, built of carefully fitted stone blocks, could accommodate dozens of large ceremonial loaves simultaneously. Smaller ovens were used for delicate offerings breads, shaped into intricate forms that required more precise temperature control. The sophistication of these installations rivals anything found in the temples or palaces of the living. Even more intriguing are the actual loaves of bread discovered in sealed tomb chambers, preserved for millennia by Egypt's dry climate. Some of these ancient loaves remain virtually intact, their crusts still bearing the impressions of the wooden molds in which they were shaped. Chemical analysis reveals recipes of surprising complexity bread made from multiple types of grain, flavored with honey, dates, and exotic spices, enriched with milk and eggs in ways that would have been luxury beyond imagination for ordinary people. The bread found in Tutankhamun's tomb includes loaves shaped like sacred animals, their surfaces decorated with patterns that tell stories from the Book of the Dead. One particularly fascinating specimen is a large ceremonial loaf shaped like a boat, complete with a crew of smaller bread figures, a literal vessel to carry the young pharaoh across the celestial waters to his eternal reward. The craftsmanship required to create such elaborate forms speaks to the high status of the bakers who specialized in funeral preparations. These funeral breads were not baked once and stored. Evidence suggests that the tomb bakeries continued to operate long after the initial burial, producing fresh bread for ongoing memorial rituals. Priests attached to the tomb complex would maintain the ovens, keeping them ready for the regular festivals when the living would come to feast with the dead, sharing meals that bridged the gap between mortality and eternity. The fuel for these eternal fires came from carefully hoarded supplies of precious wood, imported from distant lands, where trees grew large enough to produce long-burning fuel. Cedar from Lebanon, ebony from Nubia, aromatic woods that would fill the tomb chambers with fragrant smoke as the bread baked. The expense of maintaining these fires for decades or even centuries after a burial speaks to the absolute importance the Egyptians placed on ensuring their dead remained well-fed. Modern experimental archaeologists have attempted to recreate these ancient funeral breads using the same ingredients and techniques shown in tomb paintings. The process requires extraordinary skill and patience. The dough must be worked for hours to achieve the consistency needed for detailed molding. The ovens must be heated to precise temperatures hot enough to bake the bread thoroughly, but not so hot as to destroy the delicate shapes and decorative elements. The results of these experiments reveal bread of remarkable quality and complexity. The ancient Egyptian funeral bakers were master craftsmen, capable of creating loaves that were simultaneously food, art, and magical protection. The taste is dense and rich, with the complex flavors that come from slow fermentation and careful attention to ingredients. These are not the simple daily breads of ordinary people, but luxury items that took days to prepare and represented the culmination of centuries of baking knowledge. The magical properties attributed to tomb bread extended beyond mere nourishment. Different shapes and ingredients were believed to confer specific powers on the deceased. Bread shaped like the sacred scarab beetle would ensure rebirth and renewal. Loaves formed in the image of the Ankh symbol would grant eternal life. Bread made with honey from sacred temple hives would provide sweetness in the afterlife, while loaves containing dates from oasis palms would offer the promise of shade and coolness in the burning desert of the underworld. The recipes for these magical breads were closely guarded secrets, passed down through families of priestly bakers who specialized in funeral preparations. These craftsmen underwent years of training, learning not just the technical skills of advanced baking, but also the religious knowledge necessary to create bread that would function properly in the afterlife. They memorized elaborate prayers to be recited during each stage of preparation, understood the astrological timing that would make their bread most effective, and knew the precise ritual gestures that would activate the magical properties of their creations. Some tombs contain actual recipe inscriptions, carved in hieroglyphs on stone tablets, or written on papyrus scrolls sealed in protective containers. These ancient cookbooks provide fascinating insights into the complexity of Egyptian funeral baking. One recipe calls for flour ground from 7 different types of grain, mixed with water blessed in temple ceremonies, flavored with spices from distant lands, and shaped while reciting specific prayers to Osiris, god of the dead and rebirths. The bread molds discovered in tombs are works of art in themselves, carved from wood or fashioned from clay with exquisite attention to detail. Some are simple geometric forms, circles, triangles, and rectangles that correspond to hieroglyphic symbols. Others are incredibly complex, featuring intricate relief carvings that would be pressed into the surface of the dough, creating bread that bore sacred images and protective inscriptions. One particularly remarkable set of molds, discovered in a Middle Kingdom tomb near Saqqara, includes forms for creating an entire miniature feast in bread. There are molds for tiny loaves shaped like ducks, fish, cuts of meat, and even vessels for wine and beer, all designed to be baked in bread and placed in the tomb as eternal provisions. The precision required to create these miniature food items in dough speaks to the extraordinary skill of the ancient bakers who specialized in this work. The logistics of supplying these tomb bakeries with ingredients reveals the vast networks of trade and tribute that supported the Egyptian funeral industry. Grain came from the most productive fields along the Nile, selected for quality and stored in special conditions to prevent spoilage. Honey arrived from temple apiaries, where sacred bees were tended by specialized priests. Spices traveled thousands of miles from distant trading partners, their value measured not just in gold, but in their power to please the gods and protect the dead. The workers who operated these tomb bakeries lived in a world apart from ordinary Egyptian society. They were part of the vast community of craftsmen, priests, and laborers who made their living from death embalmers, coffin makers, tomb painters, and the bakers who would feed the deceased for eternity. These communities developed their own traditions, their own rituals, their own understanding of the relationship between the living and the dead. Archaeological evidence suggests that many tomb bakeries continued operating for centuries, maintained by endowments established by the deceased or their families. Priests would arrive on feast days to fire the ovens and produce fresh bread for memorial ceremonies. The living would gather in the tomb courtyards to share meals with their ancestors, consuming bread that had been baked in the same ovens, using the same techniques, following the same recipes that had been created for the dead. The bread produced in these eternal bakeries was not just food, but communication, a way for the living to send messages and offerings to the dead, and for the dead to continue participating in the life of their community. The act of baking bread in a tomb was itself a form of prayer, a physical demonstration of the belief that death was not an ending, but a transformation, that the bonds between family members could survive even the dissolution of the body. Some of the most poignant discoveries in Egyptian tombs are the personal bread molds buried with individuals who were bakers in life. These are not the elaborate ceremonial molds used for royal burials, but simple, well-worn tools that show the marks of daily use. A baker's hands that had shaped thousands of loaves for the living would continue their work in the afterlife, using the same familiar tools to create bread for the gods and the blessed dead. The experimental archaeology projects that have attempted to recreate these ancient baking techniques have revealed just how sophisticated the Egyptian understanding of fermentation and baking chemistry really was. The tomb breads were designed to last not just for the immediate funeral ceremonies, but for the eternal journey ahead. The recipes include natural preservatives. The baking techniques create crusts that resist decay, and the storage methods protect against the insects and moisture that would destroy ordinary bread. Modern bakers working with these ancient techniques report a deep sense of connection to their predecessors across the millennia. The rhythm of kneading dough, the careful attention to oven temperature, the satisfaction of producing a perfect loaf, these experiences remain essentially unchanged despite the passage of thousands of years. In some profound way, every baker who has ever lived participates in the same eternal craft, the same transformation of grain into sustenance that the Egyptians understood as sacred. The tomb bakeries represent perhaps the ultimate expression of the Egyptian belief in the power of bread to sustain life, not just physical life, but spiritual life that extends beyond death into eternity. These elaborate installations, with their sophisticated ovens and carefully crafted molds, their stores of precious ingredients, and their teams of skilled workers, demonstrate a civilization that understood bread as something far more than mere food. As we prepare to leave these cool, shadowed chambers and return to the world of the living, we carry with us the knowledge that for the ancient Egyptians, every loaf of bread was a small miracle, every baker a participant in the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governed all existence. The bread that emerged from their ovens was not just sustenance for the body, but nourishment for the soul, comfort for the living, and hope for the dead. The techniques developed in these tomb bakeries, the understanding of how different grains behave, the knowledge of fermentation and temperature control, the artistry of shaping dough into meaningful forms, all of this knowledge flowed back into the world of the living, improving the daily bread of ordinary people. The investment in bread for the dead created innovations that benefited the living, connecting the eternal and the temporal in the most practical possible way. In the end, these elaborate preparations for eternal feasting speak to something deeply human: the desire to care for those we love, to ensure their comfort and happiness even beyond death. The tomb bakeries, with their carefully maintained fires and their endless production of bread, represent love made tangible, devotion expressed in flour and water and fire, the ultimate demonstration that some bonds are stronger than death itself. From the sacred chambers of the dead, let us now ascend to the sunlit courtyards of the living elite, where a different kind of bread graces tables set with fine pottery and gleaming bronze. Here, in the comfortable homes of scribes and administrators, priests and merchants, we discover how the wealthy of ancient Egypt transformed the humble grain that sustained the masses into delicacies that spoke of leisure, refinement, and connection to the divine. Imagine yourself invited to dine in the home of Amenhotep, chief scribe to the Temple of Ptah in Memphis. The sun hangs low in the western sky, painting the mud brick walls of his villa in shades of gold and amber. You approach through a garden where date palms cast welcome shade and lotus flowers float in ornamental pools, their sweet fragrance mixing with the savory aromas drifting from the kitchen courtyards. This is a world apart from the workshop of our humble baker, though it depends entirely on that baker's labor. The grain that will become tonight's refined delicacies began its journey in the same Nile-flooded fields, was ground by the same type of stone querns, was transformed by the same ancient alchemy of water, time, and fires. But here, in the hands of specialized cooks and kitchen slaves, it will become something altogether more elaborate. The household slaves have been working since before dawn, preparing for this evening's gathering of Amenhotep's colleagues, fellow scribes, temple administrators, and merchants who have grown wealthy from Egypt's expanding trade networks. The kitchen courtyard bustles with activity, but it is a different rhythm from the solitary meditation of the neighborhood baker. Here, multiple projects unfold simultaneously, each requiring its own timing, its own specialized knowledge. At one clay ovens, a master cook tends to honey cakes, delicate confections that require the finest sifted flour, the purest honey from temple hives, and eggs from ducks raised on the estate's own ponds. These are not the dense, nutritious loaves that sustain laborers, but airy, sweet creations designed to please the palate and demonstrate the household's prosperity. The dough is enriched with milk, flavored with ground almonds imported at great expense from distant oases, and perfumed with coriander seeds that arrived on trading ships from the eastern Mediterranean. The process of creating these luxury breads reveals the vast network of specialization that supports elite Egyptian life. The flour has been sifted multiple times through progressively finer sieves, removing every speck of grit and coarse bran until it resembles fine powder. This level of refinement requires not just time and labor, but the services of skilled millers who understand how to adjust their grinding techniques to produce flour suitable for delicate pastries. The honey comes from temple apiaries, where sacred bees are tended by priests who understand their care as a form of worship. These temple honeys are graded by quality and flavor, some light and floral from bees fed on lotus blossoms, others darker and more complex from hives located near groves of carob trees. The cook selects different varieties for different purposes, understanding that the honey will not just sweeten, but will determine the character of the finished cake. In another part of the kitchen courtyard, bread bakers work on loaves that will accompany the evening meal. These are finer than daily bread, but not as elaborate as the honey cake's soft, White loaves made from the most carefully processed flour, shaped into decorative forms that will complement the dishes they accompany. Some are twisted into braids, others molded into the shapes of animals or geometric patterns that hold symbolic meaning for the educated elite who will consume them. The ovens used in this wealthy household are themselves works of art and engineering, built by master craftsmen and decorated with painted scenes of abundance and fertility. They represent a significant investment in both money and expertise. The largest oven, used for the most elaborate creations, includes adjustable vents that allow the cook to control not just temperature, but air circulation, creating the precise conditions needed for delicate pastries that would collapse in the fierce heat of a neighborhood baker's simple clay dome. As the afternoon progresses, the kitchen fills with apprentices and slaves performing the countless small tasks that support luxury food preparation. Young girls hull sesame seeds that will be sprinkled on bread surfaces, their nimble fingers working with the speed that comes from years of practice. Boys tend smaller fires where milk is being reduced to create rich, concentrated flavoring for special breads. Older slaves monitor fermentation, vats where dough for the evening's bread rises slowly in the controlled environment of the kitchen courtyard. The beer that will accompany tonight's meal is itself a form of liquid bread, produced through techniques that transform grain through controlled fermentation. The household brewery operates according to recipes that have been refined over generations, producing varieties of beer that range from the light, refreshing drinks consumed throughout the day to the strong, complex brews reserved for special occasions. The master brewer, a skilled craftsman in his own right, understands the subtle relationships between grain variety, fermentation time, and the addition of dates, honey, or spices that create beverages of remarkable sophistication. The preparation of these elite foods requires not just ingredients and techniques unavailable to ordinary people, but time, the ultimate luxury in a world where most people must labor constantly just to survive. The honey cakes baking in the decorated ovens require hours of careful attention, with the cook adjusting oven temperature, rotating the cakes to ensure even browning, and testing doneness with techniques passed down through generations of palace kitchens. As evening approaches and the first guests arrive in the villa's reception hall, they enter a world where bread has been transformed from simple sustenance into art. The low tables are set with pottery dishes, decorated with painted scenes of abundance workers harvesting grain, bakers shaping loaves, brewers stirring vats of fermenting beer. These decorative motifs celebrate the agricultural foundations of Egyptian wealth, while simultaneously distancing the diners from the physical labor that makes their comfort possible. The guests themselves represent the educated elite of Egyptian society, scribes whose literacy gives them access to administrative positions, priests whose religious knowledge makes them essential to temple operations, merchants whose trading connections bring wealth and exotic goods to Egyptian markets. They gather in loose groups, their conversations flowing between professional concerns and philosophical discussions, their voices creating a gentle murmur that mingles with the soft music provided by slave musicians. The first course arrives as the sun disappears behind the western hills, an array of breads that showcases the full range of the household's baking expertise. Simple but perfect white loaves, their crusts golden and their interiors soft and airy. Braided breads enriched with oil and eggs, their surfaces gleaming and sprinkled with seeds. Small individual cakes, shaped like lotus flowers, their delicate sweetness providing a perfect counterpoint to the stronger flavors that will follow. The guests break bread with the unhurried deliberation of people who need not worry about their next meal. They discuss the day's administrative challenges, the progress of construction projects at various temple complexes, the arrival of trading expeditions from distant lands. Their conversation reveals a world of remarkable sophistication, a civilization that has developed not just the practical skills needed for survival, but the intellectual and artistic culture that comes from having solved the basic problems of food and shelter. The beer served with the meal represents another transformation of grain, fermented rather than baked, but equally essential to Egyptian culture. The varieties offered range from light, refreshing drinks that barely qualify as alcoholic to complex, strong brews that have been aged in sealed jars until they develop the depth and character prized by connoisseurs. The guests savor these beverages with the appreciation of people who understand the craft involved in their creation. As the meal progresses, the conversation turns to topics that would be incomprehensible to our humble neighborhood baker, philosophical discussions of the nature of truth and justice, literary debates about the merits of different poetic styles, administrative concerns about tax collection and temple management. Yet these intellectual pursuits are made possible by the same agricultural system that supports the baker's simple workshop, the same transformation of grain into sustenance that feeds both laborer and scribe. The honey cakes arrive as the evening reaches its peak, their surfaces golden and glossy, their interiors light and tender. These represent the pinnacle of the baker's art confections that require not just technical skill, but artistic vision, understanding of flavor combinations, and access to ingredients that represent Egypt's far-flung trading networks. Each cake is a small miracle of transformation, simple grain elevated through human knowledge and effort into something approaching perfection. The guests consume these delicacies with the appreciation they deserve, understanding that they are participating in a cultural tradition that connects them to the gods who provide abundance, to the farmers who grow the grain, to the bakers whose skill makes such refinement possible. The act of eating becomes a form of communion, binding the participants together in a shared recognition of their privileged position in Egyptian society. Yet even in this rarefied atmosphere, the fundamental realities of bread making assert themselves. The honey cakes, for all their refinement, still depend on the same basic processes that our neighborhood baker uses: the grinding of grain, the mixing of dough, the application of controlled heat. The difference lies not in the underlying techniques, but in the quality of ingredients, the level of specialized knowledge, and the luxury of time and attention that wealth makes possible. As the evening winds down and the guests prepare to depart, they carry with them not just the satisfaction of a fine meal, but the comfort of knowing that they live in a civilization sophisticated enough to transform necessity into art, to elevate the simple act of eating into an expression of cultural refinement. The bread they have consumed connects them to every level of Egyptian society, from the farmers who grow the grain to the bakers who shape it into loaves, from the merchants who transport ingredients to the slaves who tend the ovens. The contrast between this evening's refined dining and the daily reality of ordinary Egyptian bread making illuminates the social structures that define ancient civilization. The same grain that provides basic sustenance for the masses becomes, in the hands of skilled cooks with access to luxury ingredients, the foundation for culinary creations that celebrate abundance and demonstrate social status. Yet both the humble daily loaf and the elaborate honey cake participate in the same fundamental miracle, the transformation of simple grain into the staff of life. As we prepare to leave this world of lotus pools and decorated ovens, linen robes, and scholarly conversation, we carry with us an understanding of how bread functioned as both necessity and luxury in ancient Egypt, how the same basic techniques could produce both survival and art, how the transformation of grain could feed both body and soul. Both peasant and priest